Much easier than taking the call while mobile.
I'm going to test something here real quick. I'm not sure how we have our setup, but I am putting in a message in webinar chat. If for those that are attendees and not panelists, if you can happen to see this, could you choose the raise the hand button if any of you guys can see my test message in webinar chat? I see we have a panelist, Nick, raised your hand. Nick can see it. I don't think any of our attendees can, though. Dwayne, thank you,
They
Dwayne.
cannot because we don't have that license. I asked.
Okay, great. Well, I'll have a chat about that as we get started then.
Okay.
As we get rolling here, though, before we move any further, Francisco or Dwayne, would either of you guys like to introduce the interpretation services for us this evening?
Hello, can you hear me?
Barely.
We can barely hear you.
Okay, let me see if I can improve that.
Give me 1 second to share my
I
screen.
reconnected several times to try to. Is that better?
Much.
Okay. Yes, I'll be happy to make the announcement, and Dwayne is ready to be put in the interpretation channel. And if you could give the recording rights in the other computer, Ninita. I'll make the request. So you can put let me make it clear. I'm gonna identify this computer. So you can put me in the interpretation channel, and you can put the other computer in give it recording rights.
And we're just for those of you just joining us, we're just going through and setting up interpretation so we can make this meeting accessible to all folks in both English and Spanish here. If you don't mind, we'll just take another minute to go through, and it sounds like we're setting up still.
I think we are good, right?
Francisco, are you happy with the settings? Francisco, if we're not able to hear you if you're speaking right now. While we're working on setting that up, just a reminder to our board members, please update your name to list your name and the district that you represent, if you'd like.
Alan, thank you so much. My hill that I'd like to die on is for our actual DOTI employees. We tend to be very heavy on abbreviations. Any way we can do to spell that out or just include job titles, always appreciated.
Great, thanks, Paul, for that.
No, thank you.
Francisco, are you able to hear us? Sounds like we're still working on the interpretation services. Lo siento para todos que habla español. un momentito más para ayudar ustedes con la lenguaje interpretación. So we'll just another minute here for folks that are might be waiting on the interpretation services. Maybe we'll go ahead and we'll take attendance while we're still working through the setup. Gary, would you like to dive in and go through board attendance real quick?
Sure. I see Alan is here. And I see Amy is here. I have Contreras, Amy, is that right? You're signed in as, what I see is Quintana.
I recently got married, so I'll send you, I
Oh.
guess, yeah, yeah.
So it is Quintana.
Now it
Okay.
is, yes.
I'll change that. I'll change that. Okay. Elena, I see you. Joe, I see you. Paul, I got you. Andy, I got you. I don't see Danielle yet. Is Danielle on? And then I go to Tinsley. And then June. Is June Churchill on yet?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, okay, June. Very good. And then Ian Chaudhry. I got Alicia Brown. Wait, is Alicia on? I don't see Alicia. Jamie Lewis. I don't see Jamie on yet. And Jonathan, are you there? I see you, Jonathan. Very good. And Kurt Morrison, he hasn't been here for quite some time. So as of this moment, we have 11, Jake. So
Great. Thanks so much for doing that, Gary. I think that's quorum for us.
and I'll keep tabs as people come on.
Perfect. Francisco, I see you back. Are you able to hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. If it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and
Please go ahead and introduce our interpretation services tonight. Thank you for being here.
thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As part of the city's efforts to reach out to as broadest segment of the community as possible, interpretation services are available for this meeting. If you have any,
And Francisco, we're having just a
Very
little bit of
faint
trouble
again.
hearing you. Very faint again.
is that any better?
Not too, maybe a little bit.
Okay, how about that?
We can hear you. Still not loud, but I say we can hear you for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I apologize everyone for the technical difficulties. If you have not gotten a chance to be able to use the interpretation feature before, please click on the globe on the bottom right of the screen and select the language of your choice. Para aquellos de ustedes que necesitan interpretación, por favor, pulse el globito en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Este es un esfuerzo de la ciudad por alcanzar a la mayor cantidad de segmentos posibles de la población en la
Thank you. Thank you so much, Francisco. And if you have a second to reset your microphone, it was still quite faint there. But thank you again for joining us. It's great to have you all doing interpretation services this evening. Well, it's great to see everyone tonight. We've gone through roll call and meeting minutes, or I should say we need to go through and approve meeting minutes from last time. One request I also have for board members, we're really trying to make this completely public and accessible. By the way, Danielle, I saw you opt in. Welcome. It's great to have you. And I also wanted to call out that we're trying to, the current technology prohibits chat functionality from being visible to attendees. So I would ask if you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. That way we can make it public for everybody. So we'll go through that methodology to make sure that all the comments and back and forth are being visible here for our attendees. Real quick, if I could get a motion to approve meeting minutes from August in a second, please.
Moved.
Jake?
Second.
Thank you so much, Andy. Seconded. If we could just take a quick vote by show of hands, either digital or raise your hand. All of those in favor of approving the meeting minutes. Great. I think that's a good majority. You lower your hand now, please. Any opposed? Seeing none, meeting minutes are clearly unanimously approved. So thank you for that. And we're going to move on to the public comment. I believe we have some public comment this evening from residents. Nanita, do you have the list available for those folks?
We have quite a bit, a lot. We have like 7 tonight.
Great. Since we have 7, I believe that means our threshold will be about 2-minute limit for public comment, since we do have such a large group. So Nanita, who do we have first?
We have Yuhong. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Yuhong Deng.
Hi, I'm here. It's
Sorry if
Hong.
I mispronounce Young.
Hong, welcome. Please go
Hong.
ahead. Welcome. It's great to have you.
Hi. Should I start?
Yeah, you got 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Hey, my name is Hong Dang. I live in District 1. My cross street is 30th and Zunai Street. I'm here to speak my support of the West 29th Ave protected bike lane. I have a couple of bullet points here, and I would love to go through them very quickly. So the current unprotected bike lane is not sufficient. I have lived in the neighborhood for 2.5 years, and unfortunately, even though the 29th Ave street is the most direct route for me to get over to Sloan's Lake, since I live on 30th, I cannot use it because there have been multiple instances in which I was run off the road by speeding drivers. During the winter months, it is even more perilous because one side of the street does not get enough sunlight, so there is permanent ice. So there had been situations where I wanted to bike to yoga, like on the Highland side, and I would have to be dodging both the permanent ice on the ground and the cars that are trying to squeeze me in. So I would love to have a direct route. Currently, I have to use 35th and 23rd in order to safely get to the west side of town. Since I live on 30th, like that does mean my time is not being as valued as the folks who get to use 29th Ave, and I would love for that to change. And then this protected bike lane that's happening also has the ability to bring so much joy to our community. I have a lot of community outreach and engagement that I've been doing, and I really do believe that the protected bike lane will allow a lot of people who don't drive, such as kids, to safely get to gathering spaces, such as the restaurants on West 29th Ave and Tennyson Street. And when I say kids, what I really mean is 16 to 20-year-olds. Studies have shown that the younger generation are delaying their driver license test and getting a car because it's so expensive and dangerous to drive anywhere. So
Hong, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but that's a little bit over 2 minutes.
Okay,
I apologize.
awesome.
I'd love to have you,
For
you
sure.
and everybody
You're
else
all good.
continue to go a little bit further, but
Yeah,
we are on a tight agenda tonight. So thank you for joining us this evening.
for sure.
Nanita, who do we have next?
We have Jacob. Jacob Smith. Jacob, are you in? Oh, give me 1 second. Jacob Smith, are you in? Oh, he declined. Let's go with
Can we
John.
try the next person on the list? Yeah, John Dowling, is it?
Yeah.
Great. John, if you can hear us, welcome. Please turn on your camera, or at least on, at the very least, your microphone. And we've got 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is John Dowling. I'm a cyclist. I've lived along West 29th for over 15 years now. And I want to encourage DOTI to allow the directly impacted neighborhood adequate opportunity to have input on the various projects that they're doing, as was determined to be a best practice to traffic calming and bike lanes by the city of Eugene, Oregon, who stated, "It's generally better to approach the neighborhood and major stakeholders at the outset of the project with no preconceived design proposal and let the public help develop the design." Based on the projects of West Colfax, West 52nd, East 7th, and now West 29th, it's my instinct that DOTI's MO is to blindside the neighborhood with such speed that the neighborhood can't mobilize quickly enough to participate in a meaningful way. However, a special interest group with members on this advisory board is well organized and mobilized to impose their singular solution to any situation without regard to context or the neighborhood impacted. The residents and business owners on and near West 29th were blindsided by the project to remove all parking in order to fit vertical protection for the existing bike lanes. We would like the opportunity to participate in the speed calming solution. We are further disappointed that such a project will move forward, even though the bike lanes connect to nothing at Sheridan. The various cities on the other side of Sheridan have bike lanes from Sheridan at 32nd Avenue, 26th Avenue, 25th Avenue, and 20th Avenue. So we would further like DOTI to work at the network level rather than what appears to be continuing their approach to issues without regard to context. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for your public comment this evening. It's good to see you. Who do you have next on the list, Nanita?
Give me 1 second. Eric Simon. Me promote him right now. Oh God.
Eric, welcome. It's great to have you joining us this evening. Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Simon. I'm a resident here in Denver. I live on West 29th in between Vrain and Wolf Street. I've lived here for the past 4 years. I originally moved here actually to work on the ATC MTD project with the city of Denver. So quite frankly, I've looked at probably more traffic data than most of the people on this call. With that being said, I think I go to speak for both my experience as well as the data that's provided by Vision Zero. That shows that there has actually never been an incident in the history of collecting that data on West 29th between Sheridan and Tennyson. There's been 2 incidents, both of those occurring at the intersections of both Sheridan and Tennyson respectively. So like Hong Dong, I do appreciate the measures that you guys are taking in order to reduce the speed of drivers on West 29th. As someone who's looking to raise my family here, it really is important that drivers are driving precautiously down these streets. But that being said, it came to my attention that there's an equation for whether or not a protected bike lane is needed on a road. The 2 inputs of that are both the speed and the amount of drivers down that road. The need for this protected bike lane on West 29th was used with the equation prior to the speed measures being enacted. I think it's pretty clear that if you guys didn't think that the speed would decrease, you wouldn't be putting in these measures on West 29th. So I really would like to know why that was not taken into account. Secondly, I want to bring up the efficacy of this survey that was proposed. I believe it was designed in a way that was creating a problem for a solution. I don't think that that survey was administered in a way that respected the view of all citizens of the West 29th corridor. And the fact that the survey was administered via shared link means that it could easily be swayed by the echo chambers of groups with certain interests like the Denver Bike Lobby. I think it's pretty clear that the interests of DOTI and the Denver Bicycle Lobby are pretty aligned, given the fact that many of the individuals on this call are representing DOTI as well as the Denver Bike Lobby. I think it's pretty fair to say that the citizens of Denver deserve an independent study on whether the members of the Denver Bicycle Lobby represented here on this call, I'm looking at your faces, were acted in the best interest of the public, or if their dual roles compromise the integrity of the decisions regarding transportation policies and infrastructure. Thank you.
Eric, thanks for your public comment this evening. Nidia, who do you have next this evening?
They didn't show up. Think we are good.
Is that everybody?
Yeah, but the other three didn't. I'm not seeing their name anymore.
Great. Who are the other three?
Oh, we have Heidi, Samantha, John Erard. I'm not seeing them here.
Great.
So,
Great. And I also saw Councilman Chris Hines is in attendance this evening. So Councilman Hines, thank you for listening in and joining us as well. Great. Well, first on our agenda this evening, after that, well, thank you everyone that was able to join us for public comment. We have our report from DOTI leadership. Nick, would that be you this evening?
That will be me this evening. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. It's only 4:20 on that. Just a few items today, and we're going to, one I'll just barely touch on because we'll hear quite a bit more on it at the end. First up, just a budget update. So the mayor's budget will be released, will be submitted to council and released publicly by the end of this week to start the council process on there. My guess is Thursday. It needs to be in by the 15th, which is Sunday. So likely I would guess Thursday or Friday this week. So certainly as that comes out, we will make sure you guys are aware of that and have your version of that. BRT news. So Colfax BRT had a pretty good milestone here in the last week or so with City Council approving the master construction contract. And what that gets us to do is be able to do a groundbreaking for that. And so you guys will all shortly be receiving an invitation. There will be a groundbreaking on October 4th coming up from 10 to noon on there. You will also receive a invitation to that as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the sidewalk ordinance. So last night had a public hearing and first reading of the sidewalk stakeholder committee's recommendations. I would say we had a good turnout from a number of folks on this call for public comment, very supportive public comment out there. And ultimately that did pass last night by 13-0, which was about as good as you can get on a vote on there. That will go to final reading next Monday on there, and then it's go time on there, assuming that it passes next Monday on there. But I will detail. So that is one of our items this evening. Jill Locantor is going to be talking about what is in that ordinance. But very exciting progress on this after a nearly 2-year process. So appreciate everyone that came out and made public comment, current members, former members, on that, and just very happy to have that moving along. Mr. Chair, that ends my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from the board for Nick? And also I'm seeing in chat here that there were a few folks that believe that they signed up for public comment that weren't able to. So oh, real quick, Joe, it looks like you have a question for Nick.
Yeah, I looked it up, but what is what is the construction timetable for the Colfax BRT? Is that like 2027 or something like that?
Nick, I believe you're on mute.
Yes, I believe that's correct, Joe. I will confirm that though. Yeah, should be revenue service, I think then, but I'll double check that and I'll pipe back in if I'm wrong.
And then one other thing, are we going to study the traffic patterns that result from that? Does DOTI have anything like that? What happens on 13th and 14th?
Yeah, of course. Yes, we have and will continue to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks for that answer and the question, Joe. And it sounds like we have a few more people that had signed up and something maybe got lost in the communication chain. So I think public comments important. So I want to make sure that we have time for those. If you, Alicia, I think you had an interest in doing public comment. And if anyone else in the attendees list, if you could raise your hand virtually. Councilman Chris Hines, it looks like we've got David Kidder as well. Alicia, would you like to go? And anyone else, again, that signed up for public comment but wasn't able to get translated into our list this evening, we want to be sure that you're heard tonight. So Alicia, would you like to say something for 2 minutes?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. You 2 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. My husband and I mirror the comments from John and Eric. I think I would just like to add that I feel like we're all in agreement that something needs to be done, safer streets, safer bikeways. My son uses 29th, as Alan knows. We bike to school, we bike to the restaurants. We care about the restaurants, we care about this community. And I think that there's a way that we can all come together with a plan that helps everybody. I think, and I put in the chat for the sake that, the essence of time, if everybody can't see it, I don't want to be duplicating. I think a lot of our concern is how this has been pushed through without the residents that are being directly impacted being considered. The survey wasn't available to us. It feels like a very one-sided survey. And I think at a minimum, coming back to the table and letting everybody else speak and weigh in their input would be beneficial for the community, buy-in for the bike lane, and everything that we're trying to do. I think we all have the same goal in mind. I just think there's a different way that we need to get there with maybe some concessions on both sides. Thank you.
Alicia, thanks so much for your public comment. Appreciate you joining us this evening. I saw Councilman Chris Hines. Nanita, could you promote Councilman Hines, please? And if there's anyone else that wanted to give public comment on 29th or other topics that had signed up but didn't get added to the list, please go ahead and raise your hand as well. Councilman Hines, great to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Two quick things. First, thank you to all the DOTI Advisory Board appointees. I just wanted to share, because of public comment just a minute ago, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the members of the DOTI Advisory Board are appointed by the mayor and members of City Council. So it isn't as if one organization like the Bicycle Lobby somehow swarmed the advisory board. They're appointed by elected officials in Denver. So I'm very proud of my advisory board appointee, Jay Cohen, and did not appoint him as a result of any of his organization affiliation. Second thing I wanted to talk about is support for the 5280 Trail Acoma segment. I live in Golden Triangle. I'm really excited to see the 5280 Trail come to fruition. It is the first fully funded segment of the 5280 Trail in Golden Triangle between 10th and 12th on Acoma. In 2021, the people voted for the Transportation 2C bond measure, which called for a pedestrian walkway. And I'm really excited to see that the plans that have been moved forward for the 5280 Trail show that that area will be fully pedestrianized. So I hope that the bike map that is proposed will show the segment between 10th and 12th on Acoma to be a trail as opposed to a shared street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hines, for joining us this evening. It's good to see you. And thank you for supporting the sidewalk ordinance as well. It looks like we have one more person with their hand up for public comment, David Kidder. Nanita, could you please promote David?
All right. Hello, everybody. That was a little disorienting, switching in Zoom like that.
Welcome, David. You got 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. And my name is Dave Kiter. I live in Lower Highlands. And just wanted to express my support for building a protected bike lane on 29th Avenue. I am somebody who's pretty multimodal. I drive, I walk, I bike, I take public transit. I prefer to bike if I can. It's healthy, it's fun, and it gets me where I'm going and it's efficient. But I rarely bike on 29th. And this weekend, I asked myself, why is that? And I went over to 29th and rode from Zuni over to Edgewater and back, and realized immediately why I never ride on 29th. It's a door zone bikeway, and it's very dangerous. You have moving cars moving very fast next to you, and you're riding alongside parked cars where any of those people could be opening their car door at any moment, thereby injuring me and throwing me into traffic and potentially injuring me further. So I'd love to see a protected bike lane on 29th. I would use it much more often than I do now, and it would be a much more efficient route to go east and west between Lower Highlands and Edgewater. That's all I really had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening, David, and sorry for butchering your last name. My apologies. Anybody else? I don't see any other attendees with their hands raised to give public testimony that had signed up for when I will go through. Last call. Great. So that brings us to our next item on the agenda. So sorry for running a couple minutes late, but wanted to introduce the folks from the planning side of DOTI. I know we have Taylor and Paige here this evening. Taylor and Paige are great city planners that have done some wonderful work. I've noticed, and particularly in North Denver, there are a lot more people biking thanks to all the great projects that have been designed. A very measurable, noticeable amount since that went in. So we're excited to hear updates. North Denver was one of the first neighborhoods to get a community transportation network. So we've already luckily gotten to see some of those results and see some safety improvements as well. So if you all would like to take it over, you have the floor.
Cool, thank you. I'm gonna send a request to Unanita to share my screen. And maybe Alan, let me know when y'all can see my screen. Ah, here we go. Okay. There. All right.
Looks great, Taylor.
That cool. Great. So thanks so much for having us. I'm Taylor Phillips. I've chatted with you all before. I'm a senior planner on the bicycle and pedestrian planning team here at DOTI. And with me tonight is Paige Fulton, my colleague. So we're going to kind of divide and conquer this slideshow to give you an update on our community transportation networks today and in the past, and then kind of what's coming down the pipeline in the future for the CTN program. There we go. So I'm going to kind of give us an overview of just a really quick review. I think a lot of you know what CTNs are, but what are CTNs? Kind of go over the Northwest, South Central, and Central CTNs that we've already done a lot of work in. Some of the lessons learned from installing and working in these communities over the past few years. And then Paige is going to give us a quick highlight of the North Denver CTN that we're working on kicking off very soon. So what are community transportation networks? So we'll go in really quick here for the history of the Denver Bike Program and how that CTN approach evolved. So back in like 2011, we had our first iteration of Denver Moves Bikes. So that's our citywide bike plan, all of the lines on the map that have those dashed lines that say this street's going to be a protected bike lane, this street's going to be a neighborhood bikeway someday. So really our only way that we could implement the projects identified in Denver Moves Bikes back in the day in the early 2011s or so was through our street paving program. So we kind of went along with our street paving crews and striped bike lanes as they were doing those regularly scheduled paving projects. In 2015, we updated Denver Moves Bikes, and we kind of started doing a few more one-off capital projects, some bigger things tied to kind of our CIP funding. And then between kind of 2016 and 2023, we implemented a ton of new bikeways through those two programs, and we started the Community Transportation Networks program. So that was kicked off really in about 2020, right? Coincided right with the pandemic, where we started in Northwest, Central, and South Central Denver on an effort to build out networks of bikeways in smaller geographic areas with the idea that if we build those full complete networks instead of those kind of bikeways to nowhere, we'll hopefully get more folks riding bikes, and it'll be a little bit more impactful use of our funding. So now we're here in 2024 now. We're updating Denver Moves Bikes, and we're kind of looking at how can we upgrade some of our existing bikeways, both spot improvements, so intersection improvements and things like that. And how can we make sure that the bikeways that we have today are performing at the level that we want them to and feel safe and comfortable for everyone. So the community transportation networks is kind of one of three mechanisms through which we install bike projects and safer streets projects in Denver. The other two being the general obligation bonds. So a lot of those projects are kind of in our, we call them like the backbone projects or the West Denver Safer Streets projects. If you're familiar with those projects in Southwest Denver. And then third, we have the Safer Streets paving program where we still are doing that, where we're following the 29th Avenue project that a few folks mentioned is one of those where we're following our paving crews and installing or upgrading our existing facilities through that program, which is a lot more cost effective than kind of some of these bigger capital projects. And then, you know, question mark TBD on there, if there are future bonds or other funding sources, we're always going after grants and things like that to fund more safer streets projects at DOTI. So like I mentioned before, the CTN areas highlighted here on the map are Northwest Central and South Central. So we kicked off the planning effort for those three in about 2020. Have been finished kind of designing most of those projects over the past maybe 2 or 3 years. And last year we started construction.
Is anyone else having a little trouble hearing Taylor?
I was
Taylor,
just gonna say the same. Yeah.
we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
I'll speak up. Is this better? I kind of yell.
Little bit better, yeah. I don't know if a paper fell in front of your microphone or something, but yeah, a little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. Interrupt me if you can't hear.
That's better for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm just too far back. But yeah, so we started construction on a lot of these projects last summer in Northwest Central and South Central Denver. We finished most of the projects in Northwest and still have some to go in Central and South Central. And if a couple left, stragglers in Northwest too, but there's a lot more work to be done in Central and South Central Denver. So this is kind of I actually just kind of spoke to this, but this was kind of our timeline for planning, designing, and building these projects. We did the planning phase where we're really developing the list of projects that we were gonna go after, that we were gonna design in about 2020 and 2021. And then throughout about 2022, we worked with the community, had a bunch of community meetings, a bunch of touch points with folks where we designed the projects, and now kind of last year through the next couple of years, we'll be finishing up constructing all of those projects. So our original CTN build out, so last year we installed about 52 miles of bikeways. So you can see those on the map here. Really a pretty good chunk of those were in Northwest Denver. And then we had a good smattering of projects in Central and South Central that are completed. And we still have about 66 miles of bikeways to go. So these are the dashed lines here on this map. We've got about 24 of those 66 are funded for construction in this year and spring of next year. So here's kind of a list of the Central and South Central projects that are coming this year and early next. So we've got a bunch in Central CTN. So there's a bunch of like really short projects, those little short connections and neighborhood bikeways in Central Denver that are the East 21st, 26th, 28th, 29th. We're going to finish the last chunk of Market Street. If that hasn't been done already, it might have actually. The Tremont 24th Glenarm jog is being done this year, as well as North Williams and North Lafayette. And then in South Central and kind of East Denver, we've got the Virginia Dakota Avenue corridor, which is kind of right here in Wash Park. The Pearl and Emerson corridor, which is going to be a really critical connection in Cap Hill that allows folks to travel north and south. I know that's a big one we get asked about a lot. So that's coming very soon. Birch Street way out here in southeast Denver. And then the Kearney and Cremeria corridor are they're kind of our weird stragglers that were like funded through bond, but we did outreach with the Community Transportation Network program. So we kind of lump them into the CTN kind of outreach and marketing and stuff, even though they're technically not in the boundaries. So far we've done a little bit of digging into if these things are working, and overall ridership has increased an average of about 14% from 2019 when we kicked off these projects in the planning phase, and last year, 2023. We're seeing the biggest increase in the South Central CTN area of 32%. More folks are riding bikes than were previously in 2019. A little smaller in Central CTN. I think that's partially due to the fact that we already had a decent network of bikeways downtown, and downtown just kind of its own beast. And then 7% more bicycle ridership in the Northwest CTN area, which is pretty exciting, and tells us that this is working, and still a lot of work to do, but very exciting data. So we've been doing this for the past 4 or so years now, and we've learned a ton. These are kind of our quick hits, the biggest things that we've learned. So first is that our focus should be more on building multimodal networks from the beginning of these projects, and not just focus on the bikeway network expansion. I think there's a lot of appetite, there's a lot of need for not just bikeways, but crossing improvements, sidewalks, transit improvements, just general traffic calming on streets where we're seeing a lot of crashes and a lot of speeding. So our future CTNs, we hope to really make them more multimodal and a little less focused on just the biking aspect. In order to do that, we need multimodal funding sources. Kind of one of the things that tied us to mostly focusing on bikes for the previous CTNs was that the funding was really just tied to the bicycling improvements. So it made it really hard for us to be able to include more of those kind of pedestrian, transit, and other multimodal improvements in the previous CTNs. The third thing we learned is that we need to make it a little more clear from the get-go, a lot more clear about the trade-offs needed to implement these projects. So a lot of them are hard. Parking removal is necessary. We need to remove travel lanes. We need to add diverters, and the street that you live on or you work on, your businesses on, is going to look a lot different after these projects are installed. And we need to make it a lot clearer from the get-go, what that's going to look like, how that's going to impact your day-to-day or your street that you live on, you work on, you travel on, so that we can do better in the community outreach space. We've also refined our bikeway design standards and approach to be more impactful. We were kind of writing our complete streets design guidelines and our bikeway design manual as we were designing some of these. So through that, we've been able to refine how we're designing and how we're building these projects so that the stuff that we're building works, and we're learning what doesn't work and what works really well. I think I chatted with some of you about the Vision Zero evaluation study a while back, and how we learned that speed cushions really work to slow down speeds, and some of these other treatments don't work quite as well. So we're gonna not use some of the treatments that don't work as well and really start to use speed cushions a lot more in Denver, since we're learning that they're working. And then we also learned that it's really important to move more quickly than we did in the past between plan, design, and construction. And if we can't do that, to be continuously communicating project status out to the community, so that people don't say, oh, in 2020 and 2021, you guys came and you talked to us about this project. What happened to it? It's gone. And then we go to construct it 4 years later and people are surprised. So we need to make sure that we're making that communication clear and moving those projects through to construction more quickly, so that there's not that lag in communication. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Paige, and she's going to talk about kind of what's coming next with the North Central Community Transportation Network.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. So our next area for this type of focus, this kind of initiative, is we're calling North Denver. So the Gloville and Malaria Swansea neighborhoods, mapped up on the right. So it actually connects into the Northwest and Central networks that we've already kind of built out. And I have those little arrows on this map just to show how important it is getting people both within, being able to navigate walking, biking, rolling, taking transit within these neighborhoods, but also how do they connect out of these neighborhoods? You know, there are some really big barriers to getting in and out of these neighborhoods. So how do we make that easier as well? Next slide. So taking those lessons learned that Taylor talked about, we do have a more diverse funding source for this network, which is really awesome. So we're able to do all of these things that are shown. We really want to slow speeds, make crossing safer, reduce cut-through traffic. We have dollars to be making bus stops more accessible, filling in sidewalk gaps, working with our green infrastructure team on adding some green street elements. And then, of course, if desired, separating drivers and bicyclists through bike lanes or other kind of neighborhood bikeway improvements. So took those lessons learned, we're able to do a lot more diverse types of improvements to really understand what the community needs and deliver that as soon as we're able to. So next slide, getting into as soon as we're able to. So we're kicking off this process this fall. We'll have about a 9-month planning process where we'll work with the community to build on past planning work that's already happened and prioritize any new needs that have come up since then. There's developing design solutions to help meet these needs next spring. Then over the next year and a half, we'll be refining the designs with the input of the community. And then our goal is to have a lot of these improvements constructed by the end of 2027. So less than a 3-year timeline on these, which is really exciting. And yeah, really excited to get started. I have this kind of continuing on arrow because we'll be able to deliver, and we want to deliver a lot of these things by the end of 2027, but there might be a few stragglers like the green infrastructure projects, which end up taking us longer to design and kind of consider what those would look like. So those could continue on after that. And then final slide here. So just want to see if anyone had any opinions on this, but we've heard that the term community transportation networks isn't super evocative or compelling, and it might sound a little like we're building a broadband network in a neighborhood. So wanted to get thoughts on North Denver Safer Streets as kind of a new way to characterize community transportation networks. Still playing with, is it, you know, Safer Streets initiative or project or program, but this could be a possible new name for community transportation networks. So leaving you all with that idea.
Great. We'll move to questions now. Paige, Taylor, thank you so much for that presentation. I see we have Julie with her hand raised first.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions and a comment. The comment is just your last thing is like about the North Denver Safer Streets. When I hear that as someone who's not in this business, I think of like physical safety, like not necessarily traffic safety. So it's like my first thing as a citizen might be, oh, does this mean there are going to be more cops? Which means some people in Denver might think that's great and others might think that's horrible. So that's just my gut reaction, again, as someone who's not in this business, but I get some like wonky transportation sounding thing is also not going to be, so I wish I had like some brilliant idea, which I don't, but so I just wanted to give that feedback. My 2 questions are, one is, I don't know what a speed cushion is. I've heard of speed bumps, but I've never heard of a speed cushion. And then with the bike lanes, and I'm, as a wheelchair user, I love bike lanes. Like I ride in them because they're more smooth than sidewalks. But I have heard concerns in my community about people when they have to, like if you're driving a lift equipped vehicle, the ramp comes out and it like comes out sometimes in the bike lanes. And that's terrifying because if someone's going really fast, and I was once with someone where almost happened, it could really hurt a bicyclist because like they're going to crash into the ramp. I mean, so it could destroy, it could hurt someone because if they'll go like flying over the handlebars. It can also, destroy the property. Those vans are like very, very expensive. So is there a way, can we do something to separate those out so that we're not having that issue without reducing any of the preciously sparse available accessible parking, or at least van accessible parking? So those are my two questions, but thank you. This looks so pretty. These pictures. So
Thanks. So I'll take some of your questions, Julie. The first one is speed cushions is another wonky term. A speed hump, as you were kind of saying, is pretty standard nomenclature for most Denverites. The only difference between a speed hump and a speed cushion is these little cutouts here. So this is a cushion, and these cutouts allow our emergency vehicles to be able to not have to slow down when they're responding to emergencies and calls. Because an emergency vehicle, so our fire trucks and our EMS vehicles have a wider wheelbase than a normal passenger car. So a normal car will still have to go over those bumps, but our emergency services can glide right through.
So that it looks like there's some room there. So again, for like a wheelchair user, like those are very, especially for someone who might be using a manual chair, could be almost impossible, but even using a power chair, they're very painful to go over. And if someone has stuff under their chair, which some people do based on their equipment, it can wreck that. So is there enough room for like a wheelchair to go through and not have to go over the bump?
Typically we'd hope that the wheelchair users are using the sidewalk.
If they work, if the sidewalk works, which they often, and there aren't sidewalks everywhere.
Yeah, I think the spacing between the speed cushions is about 2 feet. So I'm not sure about the width of a wheelchair. Maybe you have kind of a
usually, I mean, they're usually between like 24 and like a really wide one might be like 30 maybe, or I mean, I know it has to be like 32 inches inside, so they're usually small, but they're not. So anyway, it would be nice if that was there, because again, until we get all of our sidewalks fixed, a lot of sidewalks just aren't usable. And the reason why people like me use the streets is because going over bumps like really increases like physical pain. And so you don't want, so that's why we avoid the sidewalks to use the streets, but those bumps are really awful. So
okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never really thought about that before, but yeah, also something I'll chat with our design team about in the future. And then your second question was kind of related to accessible loading. So every protected bike lane, every bike lane design and the land use characteristics and stuff like that is pretty different, but generally we try to put accessible loading zones at the intersections because that's where the ramps are. So we try, especially in downtown and some of our more dense neighborhoods where we would be needing accessible loading zones more frequently, we try to put those at the intersections where you can more easily access that curb ramp and not have to load directly into the bike lane, adding some sort of little dedicated zone where that ramp would deploy. But like I said, every street's different. Sometimes there's not enough width to do that, and I understand. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you've got to just deploy into the bike lane, and definitely a consideration.
Great, Joe, go ahead.
Oh yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for your fine presentation. It was very clear and some interesting images there. I'm just wondering how scalable all of this is coming where there's, in my district, you don't show anything. In fact, you made a little reference to the Kearney Cremeria thing, sort of like an aside. Oh, well, we have to do that too. But is this going to be, maybe you don't know, but translated to other neighborhoods? Are we going to concentrate for the next 3 years on these neighborhoods only? And pretty much, the other neighborhoods will have to wait. What is the plan for the whole city to see some of this?
Yeah, good question. So we only have enough funding to do like a few of these per year. So the Northwest Central and South Central Denver projects, we're done planning, designing new projects in those 3 areas. We're just building the stragglers, the leftover projects in the next few years. North Central's kicking off, so they're starting that planning and design phase. And then we hope to, yes, continue to keep going to more areas, more neighborhoods. And we're still kind of determining what that next neighborhood is at this time and identifying funding for it. It's really just waiting for that funding and the staff to be able to churn out these projects.
Okay,
But
so it's
the goal is
mostly
definitely-
funding that's holding you back.
Definitely.
Not holding you back, but
Yeah.
delaying.
Delaying, yeah. But the plan is
Yeah.
to get to all of the Denver neighborhoods eventually.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to mention this isn't the only way we deliver bike projects. It isn't the only way we deliver pedestrian crossings, sidewalks, all of those things that I have on the next slide. We have other programs that also work on kind of spreading out the peanut butter around the city, so to speak. So just because we're not coming in with the community transportation network or Safer Streets Initiative or whatever we're calling it, doesn't mean improvements like this wouldn't be showing up in your neighborhood or district.
Thank you.
Great. Elaine.
Yeah, thanks. I had a couple of questions and thoughts. So I think I'll just rattle them off and then maybe you guys can answer them just in the interest of time. So I was super curious. This is more of a curiosity question than anything. Like which funding sources are restricting you from not exploring other mobility options other than bicycles? I'm just curious, and it sounds like maybe you've figured that one out and you're moving forward with ones that can help you fund multimodal planning, but I was just kind of curious about that. On the slide where you talked about the increase in bicycling, I was just kind of curious how you are measuring the impact. Where'd you get those numbers? And then more of a kind of a comment, I guess. When you're communicating the trade-offs, and you guys mentioned a lot about the parking and moving parking, you didn't lead with Vision Zero, and that's just more of just a encouragement from someone like me on the advisory board. Just I would really encourage you to lean on that type of language, because I think it's really important for everyone to understand that probably the leading factor in adding these multimodal options and infrastructure to our city streets is to try to reduce the 40,000 people nationally that are dying in crashes. So we're really trying, that's the leading effort. And yeah, does it suck that your parking space might get moved? Or I should say the parking spot that you like to use, it's not yours, it's the city's space. Of course that is frustrating. I get it. It can change your patterns and make you rethink things, but at the end of the day, this infrastructure really helps to save lives. And then the last question, and probably one I'm the most interested in your answer, is besides just the straight up answer of funding, but like what allows you to more quickly move towards implementation? Like, I mean, maybe the answer is just you need a whole bunch of money, but are there any other like bureaucratic things or administrative things that would help move the process along?
Lots of good questions there. So I wrote them all down so I didn't forget. So first is kind of funding constraints and how the previous CTN approach didn't have as much money for pedestrian improvements. That's just kind of how our department is set up. I don't know, Paige, if you have more to speak to about this, but we have a bike program and a pedestrian program. They have dedicated buckets of money that they have to spend. So if the pedestrian program is already, allocated that money to something else, it's hard for us to say, but we need this other thing for this.
So it's fair to say you learned to lean into the multimodal language instead of bucketing everything and making it difficult. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, it was really just community transportation networks were a brainchild of the bike program, and then we realized it'd be better to kind of combine resources, but that takes years and years of planning. So now we're at the point where we can do that, but it's taken us 5 years to get to that point.
Yeah. And then your second question was about the data that from I'll try to get to it, this map. And that was from, it's kind of like a big data source. It's called Locus. It uses like cell phone data and things of that nature to make a guess, a pretty good guess at what mode of transportation folks are using. So whether it's biking, walking, bus, driving. So we use that kind of big data source to make this estimate. Of course, it, has some subjectivity to error, but that's where that came from. Appreciate the emphasis on Vision Zero, and I think that we're definitely starting to move more in that direction, especially as far as our messaging goes and leading with Vision Zero. It's definitely a huge focus for all of us at DOTI in our day-to-day work. And then what allows us to build projects more quickly? Yes, funding is a huge, huge piece of that. Another thing that I'm really excited about is the Denver Moves Bikes update. I talk about this a lot. It's one of my projects, which is our citywide bike plan. So being able to update that bike plan and use better, more up-to-date data and information allows us to take that line on the map and be a little bit more confident in that this is the right street, this is the right facility type. So we can move through that kind of planning phase a lot quicker. Design just takes a long time. There's a lot of like steps where you have to submit 30% designs or 90% designs and go through all of these like nitty-gritty details that I'm glad I'm not an engineer and don't have to do. But that it just is the nature of designing a street. It just takes a long time. But there are definitely ways that we can make that quicker. And other ways, having the adopted complete streets design standards, bikeway design guides that allow us to just kind of copy paste and say, yep, this is how we design bikeways. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we start a new project. That helps a lot. And then, yeah, I don't know, Paige, if you have any other ideas.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Yeah, we were kind of building the plane as we flew it with the first CTNs. A lot of these elements we had never used before, like speed cushions or pinch points or all of these things. So now we have a really strong sense of what works and what doesn't, as Taylor said, and that just helps us be faster next time.
Great. We'll go to Jake and then June. Definitely want your voice to be heard, but friendly reminder, we're about 12 minutes behind schedule. So Jake, take it away.
Awesome. I'll do my best, Alan. Taylor and Paige, thank you so much for coming. I am our District 10 rep, so I think you maybe have a few ideas where I might be going on some of these things. But I did just want to say, in District 10, the downtown network is strong and getting stronger. So thank you. It's a really well-built, well-considered machine, if you will, down there. And 15th and Market's designs seem to set us up for even better success. With that being said, we got 32% more people biking around, and if you will, in South Central, the Northeast South Central area is really feeling the pain on North-South routing. And I know we have the Emerson Pearl route planned. Additionally, we have the Sherman route at least partially built through District 10. And I think this is the topic I hear the most about as a member of our DOTI board entirely, is this north-south route through particularly Capitol Hill and onto North Capitol Hill. I think some of the feedback is actually coming from maybe a few things I'm hoping we can tweak the design on the Sherman Street implementation. The first and foremost, I would say, is the roundabout really needs crosswalks. I've heard the feedback. I've seen some really scary situations. I've seen drivers yelling at pedestrians that they aren't allowed to cross there because a roundabout means that the driver doesn't have to stop, which is like a wild, confusing misunderstanding of what a roundabout is. But apparently, I don't know if there's other parts of the country that have different opinions on what roundabouts mean, but I think that has been a tension point in particular. So would love that paint, if possible, on the roundabout But I think additionally, there's some concerns on the Pearl and Emerson routing that one, it's pretty indirect, which I frequently hear that we don't have a current route that goes from North Capitol Hill to south of Spear. Technically, the Sherman route kind of does, but people don't feel it because of the jaunt, and it feels like maybe a little bit too much lift, and I'm worried that might continue on the Pearl and Emerson route. It's just very kind of indirect. There's also some intersections I'd like to advocate for maybe some looking into the speed. 10th Avenue, I frequently hear about the speed of vehicles being much higher than 11th and 12th. And that I don't believe has an intersection treatment in the current design plans. And so I'd love to encourage a look at that given some of those higher speeds we see on 10th. And then I'll go really quickly because I know we're running out of time on the final 2 points, but I want to echo Councilman Hines on wanting to call the Acoma 2 block section a trail over a shared street, given the really the design is more reflective of something different than some of the concepts that we've talked about for a shared street. And then I want to say that the interconnectedness between neighborhoods is just like of the utmost importance, both in South Central and also like as I look at like the Fox Island and the North Community Transportation Network. Like I know that it has some obstacles that you don't get a choice about, but just that interconnectedness is key. But sorry, end of montage. I'll let you react.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Jake. I think, yeah, I'll point taken on all of those things. I think we'll look into kind of the 10th Ave and all that stuff. The Sherman traffic circle roundabout thing, we did hear a lot last year when we installed the traffic circles that drivers weren't yielding to pedestrians. So going forward, our new standard is to add marked crosswalks to all legs when we install a traffic circle. We need to, you know, figure out a funding source and a way to go back and do that for all of the ones that we've installed that didn't get those last year. But it's definitely on our radar as something that we need to get done ASAP. But yeah, thanks. Thanks for all those comments, Jake.
Thanks, Taylor. I think time for a last question. June, take it away.
You know, I always ask lots of questions. I'm going to ask them quickly and hopefully the answers won't take too long. I'm so sorry, we are still over time. So how much are you anticipating the total build out of the North Denver Safer Streets will cost? And sort of what's the gap between the level of ambition you all want to achieve versus what resources are available? I'd love to know specifically how much budget is being dedicated to greenery. I know especially for North Denver, environmental justice is extremely serious. I mean, literally just look at it on a map and you can tell there's serious environmental justice problems. And greenery is one of the best aspects, I think, of making a city usable for multimodal travel. In addition, I remember there was that $22 million federal grant from the bipartisan infrastructure law. How's that getting factored into this? And also, what does our project density look like in North Denver CTN versus the other CTNs? And also, finally, are you looking to activate some of the new sidewalk funds coming in to fund these projects? Overall, I feel like given historic disinvestment in Globeville and Elyria Swansea, an additional extra level of investment is very much warranted with this project. Safer Streets is fine to me as branding. And thank you, Eileen, for asking your questions as well. You got a lot of good information that I enjoyed.
Taylor, I hope you're recording that.
I think, Paige, I'm gonna lean on you to those answers.
Yes, great questions. I don't know if I have all the answers to all of them, but you can definitely send me an email and I can answer them more thoroughly. Overall, we have about $14 million put together for this North Denver Community Transportation Network. That's from various funding sources. In terms of the density of network, we're going to design to what amount of money we have. So it's kind of unclear to me what that'll look like exactly. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That's been a big issue in this area. And just in general, you know, we're still here 4 years later, still trying to build out our networks and these other areas. We want to get them in as fast as possible. So kind of to be determined on density of networks in terms of bike, ped, transit. Green infrastructure, it's a great question. This area is a priority for our green infrastructure team. You know, urban heat island effect is really high in this area as compared to other parts of the city. But we kind of need to scope out what's needed before we can identify what projects we're going to do and how much money we're going to spend. So we're working a little bit backwards in terms of green infrastructure, some of the other funding sources. We know how much money we have with green infrastructure. They're like, tell us what's needed and we'll see if we can fund it. So that's the approach we're taking there. I got some of them, maybe not all of them, but yeah, feel free to email me about that. And maybe I can put my email address in the chat.
I will quickly say on the density question, I might suggest a metric, which is to sort of collate what is the total linear feet of roadways or even area of roadways and public right-of-way in that area versus the total funding amount for the CTN compared to the other areas. That way we can do a really sort of one-to-one comparison in a way that I think would be informative. Thank you so much. That's all my time. I appreciate the answers.
Great. Paige and Taylor, thank you both so much. I know that was a lot of questions. We did hurry up offense there at the end. Thank you, June, by the way. But I just want to applaud Dottie and you all. So often, you know, this North Denver CTN, Globeville area, Swansea is one of the last places in the city to get improvements in infrastructure. So just really want to applaud the department for taking an equity lens and bringing better sidewalks, bus stops, and bike facilities to those neighborhoods. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh.
Great. Well, next on the list, apologies, we're running about 20 minutes behind. We have Greg, one of our DOTI project managers, who's going to be giving us an update on District 10. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Sorry for running a little bit behind, but we'd love to hear your updates.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and
District 10.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I was having a little difficulty getting in. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I can find it here. Perfect. I know you guys have heard from a couple of my fellow community designers, but Maggie and I believe Rolando have already met with everybody. But my name is Greg Ciesick. I am a landscape architect and a community designer for Council Districts 7 and 10. And I'll give you a little bit of my background. So 28 years as a professional landscape architect, worked on a variety of projects, multi-use trails, development projects in the Chicago area before I moved out to Denver 23 years ago. I've been with the city 17 plus years. I started in golf back in 2006 in parks, did a lot of parks projects as well. And then I also dabbled with general services doing building maintenance projects. So, and now I'm with DOTI since last October, so almost a full year. I'm working as community designer, working with Councilwoman Elvidrez and Councilman Hines. As I said, I've lived in the metro area for 23 years. Avid runner, hiker, dog lover. My wife's allergic to dogs, so fortunately we can't have them. So we borrow our neighbors' dogs a lot, just so we can feel like we're a little bit more Colorado by having a dog and taking them on hikes. So, and then I also do commute into work from Bear Creek Park, basically up to downtown Denver on most days when I can. So it's a little fun 13-mile ride in and back home each day. So that's a little bit about my background. I think I won't go over this too much, but I think that Maggie and Rolando have already mentioned this. We're kind of the city council liaisons to transportation implementation projects. We do a lot of internal DOTI contact for community outreach planning, work with OCPE a lot. We work with the area traffic engineers and a lot of the projects that get escalated up 311 and maybe through council office. We work on a lot of those. Then we do a lot of coordination between projects and programs and just different agencies. So we like to use our herding the cats image here. And then our 4-person team, Maggie, Molly, who will be here next month, myself, and then Rolando, and those are our council districts that we work with. Some additional stuff that we do, or additional DOTI facing roles. So planning, that's Paige and Taylor part of. Office of Community Engagement and Business Engagement, excuse me. Solid waste. We get a lot of questions about solid waste. So we do a lot of directing of those questions over to solid waste folks. Curbside and parking, street maintenance and operations, which is signing, striping, and then wastewater. So wastewater seems to be my one that I've been working with a lot this last couple of weeks, just in terms of some street flooding and things. So interesting. So on to Council District 10. So some good news I would say is we don't have a whole lot of DOTI transportation projects going on downtown, like actual active construction projects, which is probably a welcome respite with all of the cranes and everything else that's going on downtown. So a lot of our focus has been mostly on the bike projects that you'll see that Taylor talked about. But yeah, the Market Street bus and bike lane gap. So that's that little section between 14th and 17th that wasn't installed as part of the original bike network that went in, I think, in 2022. Or it actually might have been 2023. But that section's actually started yesterday, I believe. So that should be going in this week and next. Hopefully I'll have that done soon. And obviously the 16th Street Mall project that everybody knows about. That's kind of outside our group, but I just wanted to mention that. And then the RTD downtown rail reconstruction that's happening. So sounds like that's a little bit ahead of schedule, which is nice. And that train service I heard is going to be reopening on the 29th of September. So I'll keep our fingers crossed for that. So 2024 construction design projects, and this is part of that central or community transportation network, so safe and slow streets. So the 21st Ave, so that's basically an east-west corridor from City Park over to Downing Street. That actually will be starting on the 30th of September. And then that'll be followed by the north-south corridors in District 10, which are Williams Street, Lafayette Street, and then the Emerson Street project as well. And then the Market Street section that is actually underway now. So some other high profile planning projects. I know Councilman Hines mentioned this is the 5280 Trail, Acoma Street section. We're actually actively working on that. We actually have a meeting, I think, on Thursday morning to discuss a little bit more about, those two blocks from 12th down to 10th Street. This is actually just a little graphic from that, where we're also going to be looking at a connection from 10th Ave over to Sunken Gardens. And it's not going to be like a full design. It's more of, figuring out what's our best route to get from the Acoma Street section over to Sunken Gardens. So that'll be a part of it. Some good news is we actually did interviews for our CMGC contractors today, and hopefully we'll be moving forward with a selection next Monday on that. So, and then I can let the world know who we've selected. So stay tuned for that. We also have the Glen Arm Street Plaza, which is that closure. It's currently closed, but they're formalizing it from 15th Street over to 17th Street. I know they were out for the 16th Street Mall opening, sharing some of the information on that, and hopefully some folks were able to attend that. We also have the 17th, 18th Ave bus priority and Vision Zero project that's happening. It's currently in design. Downtown bus priority is also just working through kind of that design development, getting a better understanding of that. And then the Denver Moves Bikes update that Taylor had mentioned that she is working on as well. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to participate in that and provide comments. And then just some other things folks might see. So this is actually a photo, and you guys have probably seen this. This is Dottie out there working in the street. So sometimes we do get frantic calls from folks just wondering what's going on, who's out in the street, who's doing what. And we can help to get that information by just reaching out to the correct people. So sign crews, you might also see a lot of utility work with Excel, Lumen, Xfinity, Denver Water. And then sometimes we're not aware of when it happens, but 311 cases, there are things that just get installed, and sometimes we might not be followed up with. So we work on getting that stuff done. And then obviously private construction are things that we're involved with when we can be, and hopefully are engaged a little bit, but maybe not all the time. So that's a little bit of what we do. And then I'll open it up for questions. I did have a learning slide that I pulled out just to save a little bit of time. So hopefully Molly, when she meets with everybody next month, can share that. Questions? June?
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Greg. Yeah, June, go ahead.
Okay, so quick question. I know the light rail construction on the downtown loop finished pretty ahead of schedule, which was super cool to see.
Yep.
How is the 16th Street Mall construction schedule looking? And also just a quick terminology ask. The 5280 trail section on Tacoma is being called a shared street, and I've seen some of the shared street renderings and they look lovely, but that's not a true trail, right? Because cars are still allowed on it. So I'd love to sort of know, why was that selected as sort of the preferred alternative and not a true, multimodal trail, which would not allow private vehicles on it, like Tacoma is north of 12th?
Yeah, so we're still working on that. In the sorry, I got a fly buzzing me here. So we're actually kind of using the 5280 trail, the part that Downtown Denver Partnership did, sort of those visioning documents, as our guiding starting point. So that block from 11th to 12th in those visioning documents is called out as a closed kind of street, like a park, basically conversion to a park. So no vehicle access other than emergency vehicles. And then the block from 10th to 11th, which is called the canvas block, the 11th to 12th is called the gallery block. If you see those documents, we're starting off with that as kind of a shared street, just with the understanding there's a few more businesses on that. And so we're not saying that it's this or that. We're actually just using that as a starting point to frame kind of how we're gonna, go through the process and get a better understanding. And we are meeting with a lot of the folks that have property and business owners on those two blocks over the next couple of weeks, just to get a better understanding of their needs and what they would like to see.
Okay, so just so I'm very, very clear, 12th through 11th is considered to be a park right now under the current consideration, and then 11th through 10th is a shared street?
Yeah, and then we're basically using that framework that was developed by the 5280 guidelines as that starting point. So those may change. It just depends on how the process plays out. But that's where we're starting from. Jake, did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Satisfactorily enough, and also we're still behind schedule.
Yeah, okay. Jake?
Awesome. Well, as someone who got to work on the trail marking program for the 5280 trail 4 or 5 years ago, and one of my 2 murals is still standing on Sherman Street between 16th and 17th, I could not be more excited to actually see part of this trail come to fruition. I want to communicate that, like, that is a neighborhood that needs a Main Street, if you will, so badly. And I'm just so excited that it's coming. I have so many questions about what the future will bring, but we just got to build those 2 blocks first. So I'll leave that a little open. And I am also really excited about the Glenarm one. I do have some concerns on the Glenarm option. There has been some challenges with some lack of access to the bike lanes from time to time on Glenarm. I know that's come up a few times where like the temporary installments have
Yep.
gotten in the way of either the bike lanes or in some cases the sidewalks. Or will the permanent fixtures for that be less intrusive on those spaces?
Yeah, I think some of the, initial things they've been discussing here, it would formalize more of the bike lanes through that area. How they do that, they're still working through that design, but I know a few of the things that I had originally seen, they were kind of discussing how best to incorporate those bike lanes with those improvements.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if this is the best item for you, Greg. So tell me if I'm totally outside of your realm of things you oversee, but I just know in District 10 we just consistently hear about challenges with the scooters. I know that's not exactly a design issue, but I think it's created some of the spaces becoming unsafe. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I walked home on the 60th Street Mall on Saturday, and I saw maybe 50 scooters riding between the fence and the stores. And I got to admit, I'm a pretty confident pedestrian, but that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And basically ruined that space.
Yeah. No, and I actually am on a group that we just formed here at the city to talk about scooter kind of awareness and education. So we're looking at actually developing, we're looking at developing a website that's solely for scooter use and parking, proper use of those scooters, how to park them, not riding on sidewalks, please use the bike lanes. So we're actually working on that actively. We're developing flyers that we're going to be handing out to hotels. We're also looking at implementing key cards, which hotels can insert into the room keys. Because what we see is it's not necessarily the day-to-day folks that might be commuting to and from work. It's generally a lot of the people coming in. It's the tourists. It's people that are coming in for events at the convention center. Those are the folks that we're really looking to target because they're the ones that we see don't really have an understanding of proper operation, proper parking. And we saw it after some really big music events, I think at Pepsi Center in keep calling it Invesco. It's not Invesco, in Powerfield. A lot of them, we saw a flood of just scooters laying across the sidewalks at the end of those events. So people just coming back, going to hotels. So we're actually actively working on that. We have OCBE involved for outreach. And it's just a matter of we're trying to get that website up and running to help inform people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I have so many other things for you, Greg, that I might follow up some other time on. But just my last one is in with the changes in the, we kind of have a lot coming up as District 10 when you look at like Colfax BRT, some of these other projects. I mean, still the 16th Street Mall. I think one concern I've heard a little bit is particularly around Colfax BRT is access across Colfax for pedestrians. I know that that's a separate team that's working on the construction phasing. But I know particularly, we're actually not that far away, and like crossings at like Sherman and where it's like a high pedestrian zone, or Franklin, and then some in the Bluebird district that have been mentioned to me quite a few times. Is that something you've got your eye on and ensuring we can connect across Colfax during that time period?
Yeah, I can definitely stay involved with the project manager for that, Brian. I work with him a lot. So yeah, I can make sure that we can get that information out there on how those crossings are going to be maintained. Obviously at some point they might be closed down and you might have to go out a block or two out to cross, but yeah, I can definitely help get the information to folks that need it. So, and
thanks, Greg.
I know somebody had asked earlier, it's my understanding that the groundbreaking is going to be, the start of construction is supposed to be sometime in October, mid-October.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, Greg.
Yep.
And thank you for all you do for District 10.
Yeah. And anybody, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Hopefully everybody's got my email address. If you don't, reach out to also District 10. I'm sure they've got it and they can share it. But yeah.
Great.
No other
Greg,
questions? Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much for joining
Yep.
us this evening. That was a really, you poured a lot of information into a short time. We really appreciate it. It was incredibly informative. So thank you,
Yep.
Councilperson Hines. Thank you for joining us as well and being so supportive of people traveling by any means in Denver. We really appreciate you engaging with us tonight as well. And with that, we'll move on to our next segment. As many of you know, last night, Council on first reading passed Ordinance 307 revisions, and it's the first time we've met as a board since those recommendations became public to everyone in Denver. So Nick and Jill will be joining us this evening to give us some updates on some of those recommendations. It'll be a little bit of a victory lap for any of you. I'm guessing that we're at council last night, but for a lot of us, I think it'll be new. So Nick and Jill, thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about the sidewalks ordinance.
Thanks, Alan. Nick and I didn't quite coordinate ahead of time, but Nick, I wanted to check with you to see if you wanted to tag team the same presentation we've been using.
Let's do it.
All right, so you get to start.
All right. Sure, I'm. Share. Okay, assume you guys can see that on the screen.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Well, yes, this is a presentation Jill and I have given a few times at this point. So hopefully we're at the very end of this one, but it's been a good run here so far. Of course, what we're talking about is the Citizen Initiative for November 2022, Initiative 307, Denver Deserves Sidewalks. And we'll talk about what that is, but really when we think about why do we do sidewalks and what is this opportunity, we always talk about a funded opportunity, which are the best kind on there. And really when it comes to sidewalks, it's establishing a safe, connected sidewalk network that enhances mobility for all. Alan is representing right now what a lot of our sidewalk network looks like out there. And in certain areas, you can see there is no sidewalk, or there's a 18-inch Hollywood sidewalk. And a lot of that is dependent on what neighborhood you're at. And that's really the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish and what I think 307 will allow us to accomplish on there. So of course, I think this group is familiar, but the Denver Deserves Sidewalks at its most basic shifted responsibility for sidewalk repairs, construction, and reconstruction from how it was previously and how it is in most cities to be the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to the city. So now the city is responsible for that construction, reconstruction, and repair of those sidewalks. And as I said, it is a funded opportunity, so it also establishes a fee to pay for that work. So what it does not include is it just does not change anything around the city's Department of Justice settlement around ADA ramps and the quantity of ADA ramps and the speed at which we're putting those in. It just does not, this is not pedestrian crossings, this is not trails, shared spaces, other pedestrian safety measures, and very importantly, this is not snow or debris removal. So adjacent property owners will still be responsible for snow and debris removal. And when we talk about sidewalks in the city, we're talking about 3,100 miles of sidewalk on there. So about 40% of those are like what you, well, no, I guess what you see behind Allen is part of the 360 miles of sidewalk gap. But then you also see, as you see on the image here, what we call deficient sidewalks. So these are, at their most basic, sidewalks that are less than 5 feet, oftentimes much less than 5 feet. Of course, the dreaded Hollywood sidewalk, what you see there on the right. Well, I've given you guys a lot of updates, but I think what we've been doing since November, it's a lot of internal work, but then really what brings us to this point today is after 10 months of bi-weekly meetings, and we had a number of crossover members on there, thank you to everyone, the stakeholder committee came up with a slate of recommendations, and this is what council is now working on passing. Also during that time, city council delayed the start of billing till January 2025. And just as a reminder, this is going to be a line on people's stormwater bills. And those stormwater bills start going out in January. They're biannual, so you get 2 bills a year, half and half on there. And so they'll start going out in January, but they go out on a rolling basis throughout the city. So a lot of folks won't be receiving a bill right at the beginning of January, but don't worry, it's coming on there. And so that really, I think, will mark the beginning, the formal beginning of this program too, is January 2025. So with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Locator to talk about the recommendations.
Thank you, Nick. As Nick mentioned, there was a stakeholder committee that was convened to consider and develop the recommendations. That was very much a community-based committee. It included representatives from every single city council district, multiple representatives from this committee, including Alan and Jake and Gary. Thank you all so much for your contributions. We had Councilmen Cashman and Flynn, including Flynn being probably the council member who was most opposed to the original citizen initiated ordinance. So a lot of very diverse perspectives on the committee, hashing out potential refinements with a lot of community input as well. We had an email address that people could email the committee directly at. We also put out some draft recommendations in the spring that you might recall, and got huge response via community surveys to that. And a lot of data, as well as input from all the different departments that will touch this program, not just DOTI, but the city attorney's office, departments of finance, departments of parks and rec. So a lot of really extensive deliberation that went into the development of these recommendations. And some of the key considerations that were front of mind for the committee were responding to the primary community concerns that we were hearing directly from the community and from city council members. The top concern being unusually high fees on some residential properties, particularly corner lots, but also a desire to retain some relationship between the characteristics of the property and the fee that was charged, in particular recognizing that larger low-density properties require more sidewalks to serve those residences and parts of the city. Also a desire to ensure that everybody is contributing meaningfully to the sidewalk fund. We are all pedestrians at some point in our day, and so it makes sense for all of us to chip in and help build out a complete sidewalk network. Wanted to make sure that there was a meaningful and accessible rebate or discount opportunity for low-income households, that whatever scheme we came up with was understandable to the general public, as well as implementable by DOTI in terms of being able to collect the fee, as well as making sure we're compliant with legal requirements from the state around enterprise funds and, of course, everybody's favorite Tabor. Next slide. So the committee came up with recommendations in three main categories. First, the overall fee structure, how properties are paying into the fund that will support the build out of the sidewalk network, the affordability options for lower income residents, as well as some more operational issues related to the implementation of the ordinance. Next slide. And I apologize if there's background noise. Denver Water is currently completely dismantling the street next to my house, and it is very loud right here. Hopefully you all can't hear that. So if you recall in the original ordinance, the fee was based on the linear frontage of each property. So basically the fee was tied to how many square feet of sidewalk do you need in front of that property, which is what led to the wide variation in some properties paying very low fees, other very high fees. So the recommendation of the committee is to charge most properties a flat fee, which is roughly equivalent to the average that properties would have paid under the original ordinance of about $150 per year. But for particularly large properties, an additional impact fee of $3.50 per foot for accounts that have more than 230 linear feet of property frontage. And just to be clear, that impact fee applies to the 230 first foot and beyond. It does not include that original 230 feet. And importantly, these changes maintain revenue neutrality. Under the original ordinance, it would have generated about $40 million per year. It will still do that, which helps ensure that DOTI can actually achieve the goals of the program as approved by the voters, building out the complete sidewalk network, maintaining it in good condition going forward. Next slide. So as I said, most properties will be just paying the $150 per year flat fee. Across all properties, about 96% will pay that flat fee, and only 4% will pay the additional impact fee. When we look specifically at residential properties and single family homes, which is the biggest concerns we heard about the fee rates, about 99% of those properties will be paying the flat fee and only about 1% paying the impact fee. Next slide. So the second major category of recommendations was around affordability. Under the original ordinance, there was a 20% discount that was automatically given to any property in a nest neighborhood. Those are neighborhoods designated by the city because they have historically been underinvested in and are at risk of gentrification and displacement as these improvements come to the neighborhood. As well as the option for anybody across the city to defer the fee until the point of sale of the property. The thinking at the time was to make this as easy as possible for people to participate and easy for the city to administrate without creating a whole new program. The city went ahead and created a whole new program for the new solid waste program, by which we pay for trash and recycling and composting. They now have an income qualified program where households can apply, and if they are below a certain threshold income, receive a rebate. So we figured now that that exists, let's just piggyback off of that. That allows low-income households across the entire city, whether they're in a nest neighborhood or not, to receive a targeted rebate for their income level. That is limited to property owners and doesn't benefit low-income renters. So to make sure that we were considering multifamily housing as well, the committee is also recommending a 20% rebate for multifamily housing, where a certain percentage of those units are deed restricted affordable housing. So we're providing some relief and incentive for property owners that provide those low-income housing opportunities. Next slide. So this slide just shows under the current solid waste program, the income levels that qualify for a certain percentage rebate. And you can see for the lowest income households, it may be up to 100% of the fee is waived. Next slide. And this is where I hand it back to Nick to get into the implementation recommendations.
Thank you, Jill. Yep, a few more changes here I want to point out. First up, so when this ordinance was written, it was always intended to potentially be bonded against as it becomes an enterprise fund on there. Originally, the ordinance had increases every 5 years on the advice of our Department of Finance, and to position it to be more attractive to bond markets. Recommended moving to annual increases based on both Consumer Price Index and the Colorado Construction Index. And that will really give us, I think, a good, be confident that we are not losing ground when it comes to inflation, as we have seen over the past 5 years on that. Timeline, originally the ordinance was at 9 years. I think as the deeper we got into it, that felt like a really big challenge on it without potentially cranking up the fee on that. And so the committee felt it was appropriate to give some flexibility there of 9 years or as soon thereafter as determined feasible by DOTI's executive director on there. You know, and absolutely recognize the reason this bill came, and certainly the reason this bill was passed was because the public was not satisfied with the pace of sidewalk build out in the city. And so want to be very clear that this is not a backdoor way to just go back to the old ways and see in 300 years on this. There will be annual reports that engage explicitly this committee as well as city council, so you all can make sure we are staying on track on there. And all of these are designed to improve the overall fiscal sustainability. We want to make sure that we're accommodating labor, supply challenges, all of that, and allowing rates to reflect the true cost. So as I mentioned earlier, billing will begin in January 2025, and we'll be conducting, without jinxing it, once this passes next week, we will start to conduct public outreach around this, so folks are aware again that this is coming. Gotten a fair amount of press, which is always helpful on this. One kind of weird spot we've been in while we've been working on this is the responsibility to repair sidewalks is on the city, but we were not collecting revenue yet, meaning that it was very difficult get out and do repairs as we needed to. Team has been able to collect some existing funding to do spot repairs, and so is doing those now through the remainder of this construction season. On that, we will be step 1A, as I like to say, is developing the master plan that will really lay out how all of this work will be done. Repair work will be going on during that time. We think the master plan will take approximately 1 year to do. That doesn't mean we will just be sitting on our planning laurels for that year. On there, we will be, of course, doing the repairs as they come in through 311 and other data that we've collected. Also, getting started on a number of projects that either through bond or other funding sources had already gone through planning and or design on there, and are effectively ready to go on there. And then we're also looking at what types of long-term delivery models are available. You know, this is a unique opportunity. We certainly have not done sidewalks on this scale. No one has on there. And we think there's probably some exciting opportunities out there that will use the benefit of that volume to hopefully create some efficiencies that allow us to do this as quickly as absolutely possible on there. And that remains the goal. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Dan, I think we got time for probably about 1 or 2 questions. So let's go to Danielle and Andy, just since we're running behind and we do want to get to June, but want to make sure we at least get a few questions in here. Danielle, take it away.
Thanks so much. I'm wondering if the sidewalk gap program will be a part of the Go Bond Master Plan projects that are going to be prioritized in District 8. We have, okay. So
yep, those are those ones that have been cooking and will be ready to go early, that we'll be excited to use these funds and then get those. So yeah, those will be the types of projects that'll kind of kick off while we're doing that master plan.
Okay, and even if they're not in the Go Bond website listed for projects, it will still be a part of that.
Yeah, ultimately all of it will get built. We'll be looking for those ones that are farthest along that don't require a lot of planning or design to get kicked off. But yeah, I think we're aligned.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Danielle. Andy?
Nick, I think pretty similar. You said 1 year for developing the master plan, but there's a strategy to start work in that time. And just so I understand, so there will be not just the spot repair program, but new sidewalk construction starting at some point in that 1 year. I don't suppose we have rough time.
I don't think
not
I don't think it's hooked up to the line.
Hey, Paul,
I think you're off mute.
Sync is it's good quality.
Paul, you're going to want to put yourself on mute. Your mute is off, Paul.
It's okay. Sorry, Andy. Yes, to answer your question, I don't have the exact specifics. That is the kind of information that will come. We'll start to share out here as we get past passage next Monday. And then yeah, those additional details on those projects. Because yeah, again, we don't want to just everyone passes, everyone pays their bills, and we go back and just sit in our planning rooms and do this. There will be work going on that, but I will share more details as I've got them.
Real quick, June, and then Joe looks like might have had a question too.
Yep, super quick. Are we going to see a sidewalk, a $40 million sidewalk line item in our budget?
Yes. Well, not a $40 million sidewalk. You will see the city's bill on there, and then of course, actually, I'm not exactly sure how that would show up in the budget. You're throwing me for a loop here, June. We will see anticipated revenue of $40 million over the year on there. But that's a good question. Exactly how
probably
that
from the
shows
enterprise
up.
fund, right, Nick?
It will be an enterprise fund. So
yeah.
you will see the enterprise fund in the budget. Thank you, Alan. Once again, sweeping into save.
Good teamwork. Good teamwork. Joe, take it away.
I just had a quick question. As far as the sidewalk, making them wider, we have a Hollywood sidewalk there. Is it just going to be do the easiest thing because we're lacking money and just go from the back of the sidewalk and take 2 or 3 more feet? Or are we actually going to look at narrowing the streets down a little where they're really too wide? Is the planning going to take more into account than just increasing the back of the sidewalk like they do now on houses that are built?
Yes, it will. Things like that, if there's opportunities to narrow it, because oftentimes those are some of the more challenging projects we have, because a lot of times either folks have built into the right of way, built things like landscaping, things like that, or there literally is not adequate right of way, and we would have to acquire some property, which that is a land acquisition and all of the fun timing things that go along with that. So yes, I think that's where that master plan will be very helpful in defining that. But these are all things I would say the classic all options are on the table at this point to make sure we're building, but we need to build them to standard. That is part of the requirements for this.
Nick, I know this group probably has more questions with being polite out of our time. I think it's fair to say that you would be willing to come back and talk with us in future months as we get closer to master planning and get this passed through council and things like that. And we can hammer out
If
some
you have
more
any in the
details.
interim, just email me. But yep, absolutely.
Great. I just want to thank Jill. This was an idea that she hatched that was just an idea at one point in time, went through signatures and rounds of voters and through many iterations. So Jill, thank you for this amazing gift to the people of Denver. And Nick, thank you for picking up the torch on the DOTI side of things and running with us so well.
Thank you, Alan. I would just echo. Sorry, I was just going to say, I would just echo that Jill has been a wonderful partner throughout this whole thing, and we would not be where we are today without Jill, certainly Katie Bridges, and a number of our teams. But yeah, it's been challenging. It's been 2 years, but yeah, I just want to echo that. Jill has been a fabulous partner, collaborative, patient with the city. So thank you.
And Nick has promised me a party at some point to celebrate actually starting the program. So
absolutely.
I think we'll all be invited to the ribbon cutting.
Absolutely.
The first one, I'm sure. Great. Well, June, I'm sorry we've left with 10 minutes for a budget update, but we're excited to hear your plans. The budgeting process is such an important part of the city. So June, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, for sure. So we are coming up eminently onto the Denver City budget getting released. The mayor has been hard at work with his team on putting together all the different budget proposals from all the different departments. And
June, I'm not so sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if you have an alternate microphone, but it is a little bit garbled on this end.
I'm not on a different microphone. I'm just on the same old one. Does this sound better?
No, but we can hear you, so keep going as best you can.
Let me move the computer real quick. I'll just keep on with my spiel. So the budget is about to release. I believe September 15th is when it will be posted online. Someone can correct me if that's incorrect. It's going to include all the recommendations from all the different departments across the city. And of course, as the DOTI Advisory Board, we're going to be taking a look at the DOTI budget. So as a part of that, for the past few months, some members of the advisory board and myself have been working on this letter, which I will very quickly share with folks. So you can all view it. I'm going to put this in host and pan. Oh, that's the wrong one. Give me a moment. Sorry, I used to work in IT.
June, I got it. You can keep talking about it. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Back to our lovely letter. So, folks, Eileen, Jake, and myself have been working on this. We wanted this letter to be less of a line by line because we don't, of course, have the budget yet, but more to be an overall view into our budget and to just broadly recommend that DOTI increase their budget and make a few specific recommendations as to larger scale projects that we feel would be an appropriate use of dollars. So I'm not going to read through this precisely, and I'm not sure we've got time for a full discussion and vote on this necessarily today, but that's up to you, Alan. Fundamentally, we established we referenced the Vibrant Denver Transition Committee, which talked about there not being enough consistent dedicated funding to achieve the vision laid out in Denver Moves Everyone and the Vision Zero Action Plan. We overall want a budget increase. We invoke our goals as the DOTI Advisory Board as laid out in our bylaws here: safety, multimodal transportation, climate access, and build for success. And here are the specific recommendations we made. These were things that we thought were appropriate priorities. However, the recommendations don't necessarily have to stop here, and they will get more specific and actionable as we get into the actual budget process. So first and foremost, at the very top is Vision Zero, implementing safety interventions, moving photo radar enforcement under DOTI, investing heavily into transit service and ease of use. We believe the mayor should release a funding roadmap to complete the Denver Moves Bikes network as it is being developed, similar to sort of this recent sidewalk ordinance and all the beautiful new funds we have for that. We want a complete multimodal network, not just bikes, not just pedestrians, not just transit, and not just vehicles, but everything. We don't want the city to invest funds in transportation projects that will increase greenhouse gas emissions. Notably, this includes a lot of roadway widenings that will increase capacity and vehicle volumes over the no-bill baseline. We do support a policy in this that when vehicles reach end of life, we replace them with electric vehicles. This is, of course, the bottom of the list, and ultimately, vehicle fleet replacements are pretty expensive. So if it really comes down to brass tacks and we have to decide, I believe many folks would be like, we can hold on for another year on that. And also a cargo e-bike program. The Denver Streets Partnership has had an excellent record of success with their cargo e-bike program, and we believe a similar program in this letter should be expanded out to the city. And finally, we just believe overall funding should be increased, whether that be through bond measures, whether that be through new revenue sources, whether that be through reallocations of funding. Regardless, we believe there should be more funding available. So quickly on timeline for budget process, once the budget actually comes out, I will go ahead and schedule us a budget committee meeting. If you're interested in joining that, please email me. And we will sort of go through the budget. We'll take a look at it. If there are folks interested in coming through the budget with me, like on a very detailed line-by-line basis, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that. And then we can issue a more specific letter after we issue this more generalized one asking for overall increased funding that actually goes through on a line-by-line basis in the budget to make recommendations on what should be increased, what should be decreased. Are there any projects we believe should be reallocated funding away from something towards something else, or if there's anything in the budget that we think is not within the best interest of DOTI or our goals as a committee. That is my very quick budget announcement. If you're interested in the budget committee or in reviewing the budget once it comes out, let me know. If you've got opinions on the letter, that's what this time is for. Thank you.
Jill, thank you. June, sorry, not Jill. June, thank you so much for this. This has been very well thought out. I know you and Aileen and Jake have shared this link several times over the summer as this letter has evolved. So thank you for this. Just take a quick temperature of the board. I know this has been in draft form for a few months now. Are we feeling like we could vote on this now? I'm seeing a few thumbs up and a few nods. So would anyone like to motion to vote on this letter?
This is Julie. Also move.
Okay, and a second? Joe?
I'll second it.
Joe seconded it. So we'll go ahead and take a vote at this time to send the letter as is, obviously modifying the date. All those in favor of setting the letter as is, please raise your hand digitally or otherwise.
Aye.
So we have 8, 9 in favor from what I can see here. Make that, yep, 9 in favor from what I see. Although, go ahead and lower your hands now. All those opposed? Better lower my hand. Julie, is your hand up for opposed or it just needs to come down? Okay, great. All those opposed? Great. Perfect. Any abstentions? No, great. So motion to send the letter as is clearly passes. June, Aileen, Jake, all those who else that worked on this, thank you so much for your hard work on this letter. And June, if you don't mind, I have a request for you. If you could just email the entire board once you have your meeting date set for your budget committee meeting, that would be great. And folks that could hop in are able to at that point in time. And obviously, if you want to get more involved, as June said, please feel welcome to email June. June, if you don't mind dropping your email in the chat for folks as well to reach out to you that are on the board.
Will do, and I'm hoping that that more detailed letter will be available by next advisory board meeting, as that will be the most actionable time for our recommendations to actually make it into the amendments process through city council.
That's right. Yeah, and unfortunately, as June alluded to, we do not have much time. We really do need to get that letter out, the more specific letter out at our next advisory board meeting. So for those of you that do want to take part in the budget process and really get in there and look at the nitty-gritty letters, being at that budget committee meeting really is the time to do that. June will certainly send out a draft to everyone before our meeting so folks can review it and make comments and things like that. But that budget committee meeting really is the place where that work's going to get done for the budget amendments. June, anything else to add about the budget process?
Massive thank you to Eileen and Jake for putting in so much work on this. Next, once the mayor releases it, it goes to city council. They've got they've got one round of advisory amendments, which the mayor can voluntarily adopt, then another round where city council can put in their own amendments and override the mayor. So that's sort of two-step process. It goes through the regular council process. It's kind of complicated. I don't have enough time to explain it.
Great. Well, that's almost time for today. We'll be talking lots and lots about the budget. We do have one council district update next month, but besides that, the meeting will really be dedicated to the budget, since that is one of our two main charters, and the city is advising the Department on Operations Policy and the budget and finance, more importantly. So I just want to also give a shout out to Nanita. Thanks for putting on the logistics of the meeting today. For those of you who didn't notice, Nanita sent a list of all the upcoming events going on in Denver related to DOTI. So be sure to check that out and share that with your networks in your neighborhood so folks can know of all the things that are going on in Denver. So thank you all so much. That's our time for this evening.
Thank you, Alan.
And thank you for the
Great meeting,
interpretation again, Francisco and Dwayne.
Thanks all.
Right on time.
Sorry to be the unmuted microphone guy.
Oh, it's all good.
Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, everyone.